Coming to you from sunny Orlando, Florida, welcome to the Paperstac podcast, where we cover current topics in the note industry, give you tactics for your note business, and talk with industry leaders to make you a better note investor. And now, your hosts, Brett Burky and Rick Allen.
Welcome back to the Paperstac podcast. My name is Rick Allen. This is my esteemed colleague, co-host, friend, Brett Burky. How you doing, man?
Hanging. Yeah.
Hanging? I'm so excited. We've done a lot of these. My first note. This is one that I'm so pumped about.
Yes, he was there the day that we launched our...
He was there the day that we launched, and I've talked to our guest, Troy Fullwood. Welcome. We've talked to you so much. I've bumped into you at events. In a way, you've given me some advice along the way that's not been necessarily note advice. It's been life advice, just talking to you. So I'm so excited to have you here, man. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and your audience. I'm excited. I haven't done a podcast in a while, so it might be a little rusty, but I'm excited to be here.
Oh, man. Yeah, you'll be fine, without a doubt. You've been in this industry for, I think, longer than I, definitely longer than I have. And I'd love to hear, what's your background? How did you get started? Can you walk us through that, to talk to some of our listeners about, where did you come from and how did you make this pivot into real estate notes, stuff along those lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I got started in the real estate note space by I was actually originally in the, for lack of better words, I was in the landscaping space, but I was in a niche within it, which was turf management, agricultural consulting. And I worked for a guy that some of you might know out there. His name is Ben Crenshaw, the two-time Masters champion.
Wow, yes.
Texas. So I was living in San Antonio, Texas, and I was the president of the Texas Landscape Contractors Association. And in my presidency term, I dealt with a legal battle between the city of San Antonio and the Sierra Club. And there was a big war about you can't use water, so you can't water lawns, which obviously if you can't water lawns, don't grow, grass doesn't grow, you don't mow it. There's a revenue issue there for landscapers. So I got thrown into that frying pan early on in my presidency of the Texas Landscape Contractors Association. And I did not know this, but Ben Crenshaw was watching me because one of his companies, Crenshaw DeGay, sells turf grass in San Antonio, Texas. So people aren't buying turf grass if they can't water it. So that's obviously a monetary impact to his company. But at the end of it, he hired me on to oversee large client acquisitions and things of that nature. And in doing that, I was really intrigued by real estate. I was seeing and hearing and people talk about real estate, fixing and flipping, rental properties, landlords. And so ironically, and this doesn't really happen anymore, but back in the day, and I'm going back 28 years, been in the space 28 years. Going back in the day, we had these things called late night infomercials. And I watched one, and it was an organization out of Orlando, Florida, called the American Cash Flow Association. You guys probably know some of the folks that were part of that organization that are now doing, they've been doing great for years, good people. And I signed up for their training on 32 different cash flows. Spent 5 days in a hotel learning about it with about 120 other folks. They spent 4 hours on real estate notes, and what they focused on was just the calculator. So 4 hours to use a calculator. Yeah. And you guys know as well as I know that there's more to notes than just the calculator, although that's a starting point in most of the deals we buy. There's a lot of paperwork and marketing and things like that go into it. So that's how I got started and was introduced to it. Had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. There was not the internet. There was not internet marketing. Text messaging was a thing. Email marketing was a thing, but not really. There was just so many tools that we have today that just weren't available back in 2000 and 28 years ago. I'll tell you a funny story. When I got my URL for our company, Pinnacle-Investments, I had a gentleman help me get it And then he goes, "So do you want an email?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "What would you like it to look like?" And I said, "Well, just do Troy at." And he set it up, and I had no idea really what he was doing. That's how oblivious I was to the technology side of things. So a lot of things have changed since then, thank goodness.
I remember reading a lot of that. You mentioned a lot of that in your book. Because I did read your whole book, and you had the way you were marketing was doing stuff in, like, I want to say newspapers. It was something like that. It was something you were putting in newspapers and different things like that.
Yeah.
That source of notes. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things, I spent this money on this infomercial program.
Was it Kevin Shortell? Was that Kevin Shortell's deal? Was he part of that?
No, it was Larry Pino's of Cash Flow Association, and Fred Rui was actually the head guy over there, and or Larry had hired him on at some point, but Fred did an amazing job, running the events and stuff like that. Great guy, and obviously Tracy Z as well. But
I could sit and listen to Fred talk and tell stories for forever.
Okay, he's got one hell of a sense of humor.
He's hysterical.
Yeah, he's got 1,000,001 stories. There's no doubt about it. Fred is not lacking in stories or comedy.
No.
At all.
He's funny. He's funny.
You have to like. You do have to like sarcasm though when you're around Fred. You do have to have an element of liking that.
Fred was working our booth, and we gave Fred a shirt at the last Note Expo.
Oh yeah.
And the next thing we know, Fred's got the shirt on, and he's standing behind the booth talking to customers or people who know the booth. I'm like,
doing a good job.
He's killing it. I was like, he doesn't even work here. But hey, go ahead, man. We're gonna go grab some coffee.
Funny. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, great guy, great team, folks. But yeah, I stumbled on. So marketing back then, you didn't really have email marketing. You really didn't have text mess marketing. You didn't have Facebook marketing and all of these things that we have nowadays. And the only thing you had was like print media in general. And so what I ultimately stumbled on was I was at the local convenience store right around the corner from my house. I didn't have a lot of money for marketing because I just spent literally all I had for the course and the training. And I wasn't working for Ben Crenshaw anymore. I decided to leave that company and literally go all in. Like I was, red and black. Like all my money's on, I'm just pushing it all. Let's go. And I've always been very much a leap before you look kind of guy. Like I'll figure out the parachute, how to build it on the way down, and I'll land, softly. And it's always been my nature. And so I was at this store and I noticed there was a Thrifty Nickel newspaper, and then they had a penny saver. And so I grabbed them just to thumb through them. And at the back of the Thrifty Nickel, I noticed folks were selling houses, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. And this is in San Antonio, Texas. No owner financing, no credit check. So I'm like, well, what are they doing with these notes that they're creating? They got to be creating these things, so they're creating them. They're telling us that they're creating them, so let's call them and see what they're doing with them. And ironically, I called a couple of folks, and lo and behold, not only were they willing to sell the ones they were creating, but they also had other deals that they had in inventory that they didn't really know where to sell them at the time. So I was able to pick up deals that were, one, already seasoned, and then two, I got to get in on the front side of doing simultaneous closings with them and helping them structure deals to maximize their payout on the sale of the note. And that's always been something we've enjoyed here for years, is helping people structure deals to make sure they get the most based on what the market conditions are. So that's how I started, finding deals. Because that's where it started. And going into one of our first deals that we funded, and this is funny in the sense that I decided that not only was I finding these leads in the Thrifty Nickel and the Penny Saver and the San Antonio Express News at the time, I said, well, if they're posting ads, then there's got to be other people that have had ads. So I'm going to put an ad in the paper as well. Top dollar, top price paid for real estate notes, call, no closing costs, that type of an ad. So on Monday, I call the San Antonio Express News. I sign up for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday ad. And on Tuesday, I find out from my doctor that I've got to go in for outpatient surgery on Friday. Well, I didn't connect the two dots at that time. It was a hernia operation that I had to have unexpectedly. And so I go into the hospital on Friday morning. I come out about noonish. My roommate at the time gets me home, lays me on the couch, and I asked him, like, can you put the phone by me? And because he's saying the phone's been ringing, but I haven't been answering it. I'm like, okay, just put it by me. And I was on Painkillers, and the phone's ringing. So I'm telling you guys this story because anybody's listening to this, don't tell me you can't do the business. That's what I'm getting at here. So I'm horizontal on this couch, and the phone's ringing, and I'm answering it, and I'm talking to people. And I'll just answer this question. Troy, what did you say? I have no earthly idea what I was saying. Absolutely none. I don't recall the conversations. I don't recall any portion of them. But over Saturday and Sunday, 3 people showed up at my townhouse that I was living in, knocked on our door, and dropped off files to purchase. Like, they just and they brought their files, original documents and everything, like just here. And my roommate was collecting them and just telling him, like, hey, he'll look at them and he'll get back to you. He's sleeping. And Monday morning, I was mobile a little bit more and painted, worn off. And so I started looking through these files, and yeah, they're good deals. And I didn't even price them out. Like, didn't price them, didn't do anything, called the seller back and said, okay, here's what we got. Here's our numbers. They're great. Let's do it. Let's underwrite it. Let's go forward. And they were very vanilla, single family SFR, owner occupied deals. They were one was written at 16%, one was written at 17%, one was written at 14%. That was the face in the note back in the day. And typically that was pretty commonplace back then. Yeah, no, 95, 96 era. Yeah. So it was an interesting process because I wouldn't say it was better, but it was different in the sense that people would write these deals and they would get really substantial amounts of money down on these houses. They would write them with, I would say, very short term compared to today's market, which is usually a lot of 30-year terms. A lot of the notes we bought back in the beginning were like 10-year terms, 12-year terms, 15-year terms, very commonplace. But also keep in mind that the price point of the houses in San Antonio at the time were like $30, $40, $50, $60,000 houses. They weren't $250,000 price points. But so we bought, I remember her name was Gloria. She was the first deal we closed on. Super nice lady, but she was one of the ones that brought over the file and knocked on our door and dropped off the file. And 2 weeks later, we closed the deal. We did appraisals back then. We didn't do BPOs. And the title company that closed it for us was Lawyers Title. And back then, it's in comparison to today's market. Back then, oftentimes you would take a seller's word for a payment history. They didn't use third-party servicers. They would sometimes make a copy of the check in the envelope and then ultimately deposit it in the account. So their accounting methods were less than ideal compared to today's side of the industry. You didn't do a lot of background check on them. Oftentimes they didn't pull credit on them. And so we'd have to pull credit, get updated credit. And we'd have to literally build the file. So we'd have to build out the pay history. We'd use evidence like deposit slips or bank statements, savings account statements, wherever they put money. We'd go in there, we'd pull up our own credit. Oftentimes they didn't even have lenders' title policies. So we'd have to go get a fresh lender's title policy. Oftentimes they didn't even have property insurance on the property. So we'd have to go get property insurance and put it in place for the homeowner. And those kinds of things were paid for by the note seller. The note seller would just absorb all of that cost because that was standard, operating procedure back then. So those kinds of things were very commonplace. As a matter of fact, there were times where we would ask for a pay history from people, and they would literally take $100 bills and put them on the copier and just line them out and put the payment, like whatever the amount was, and then they would photocopy it and send it to us. And can't get away with that stuff nowadays, but back then you could. But also back then we were buying notes at 60 cents on the dollar, performing notes with high yield face rates. We were buying them at 60 cents, 70 cents all day long. It was very commonplace. So we weren't as critical back then as we are now during underwriting, because back then sellers would sell for a lower price point. So you build in your risk tolerance because of that. So you could.
At 17 and you're paying 60 cents on the dollar for them. Those are,
Yes.
You've got some, you're like, hey, if one goes bad, I think the other ones are going to cover it, and that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
But like you said, build I'm the same philosophy. I was like, look, just show me where to jump. I'll build the parachute on the way down, kind of thing.
I do like the idea of putting the ad in the back. So were you were the only one fishing that lake right there because no one else had done that, huh? There wasn't other ads.
Yeah, so we coined the phrase reverse ad marketing because, in the note space, what I love about the note space is we know who owns the notes, because all you have to do is go to public record and you can figure out who owns the notes, whether it's through a title company or a list service provider. So the ads were saying the same thing, and you saw they were telling us who was creating the notes. And then, of course, back then they would oftentimes have, 4 or 5 or 6 deals that they hadn't sold yet. And as a matter of fact, we have been so successful in that style of marketing that we still do it to this day. It is literally our number one source of leads and relationship building. Not so much online newspapers, and even Craigslist is a big source of deals for us on a regular basis. Yeah. So this is how big it is. I'm just going to share with the listeners. This is how big it is. So when I was doing this in San Antonio, I picked up one of the newspapers. I called one of the ads, and this gentleman answers the phone, and I asked him about the ad. He's not, that one hasn't sold yet. We've got some other notes. We set an appointment. I show up at his office, and him and I start talking. Well, a gentleman walks in the office. His name's David, who walks in the office. David was a good friend of mine that I knew. I didn't really know what he did. He just said real estate. I'm like, okay, cool, real estate. But him and I would oftentimes go and drink beer and shoot pool and things like that at the local dive bar by our house. And the night before, David and I were shooting pool, drinking beer. The next morning, I show up at his office to meet with the owner of the company. Danny Gonzalez was the gentleman's name. And Danny explains to me that not only does he have notes for sale, he has 700 notes in his portfolio. He hands me a stack of them and says, here, if you can sell these, I'll pay you 5 points on every deal. So 5% of every deal. I'm like, okay. And that's when I really jumped into, Danny was really good at selling, but he was really bad at organization. So we would get in there and start looking at the paperwork, and you'd be missing like the second page of the note, or the signature page of the note, or the note wasn't even signed, or there was no title work, there was no insurance, there was no appraisals, there were just things. But he just knew the properties, and because he'd grown up in San Antonio, he knew what they were worth and price points and all that other fun stuff. So he didn't do it because he didn't need it, but you needed it if you're going to sell the note to somebody else. They wanted to know. But yeah, we worked with Danny for 6 months We sold off 28 loans in 6 months and made great money on it. And I can tell you that the lessons that I learned from that 6 months and working with Danny I've parlayed into hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars in transactions at this point, just because of what I.
Yeah. Did you have to go into like project cleanup mode on some of those files and say here, or did you, what he had so many of them, was like, that one's got issues, give me the next one?
We went into project cleanup mode because it didn't even matter if we went to the next one, it had problems too. So we just took what we got. And the great thing about it, one of the many blessings in that whole thing was his office literally shared a wall with the title company, which was Lawyers Title, and Jane were at Lawyers Title. Like they literally like shared a wall. Like if you punched your hand through the drywall, it would come out in Jane's office, like that kind of a wall. And then the insurance agent he used was right around the corner, and not around the corner, but it was in the parking lot next door. So it was in the next complex over. And so in that little triangle, I was able to get a lot of stuff done by just, sitting in front of people and pulling title work and title searches and looking at the paperwork and figuring things out as they went along. He gave me a desk in his office. It wasn't even in his office. It was in his storage room. So, those hallways, you guys probably have one of these in your office. You go down the hallway, there's a door at the end of the hallway. That's the storage room. That was my door. And I would he opens the door, there's a desk. And I was literally in the storage room with boxes, learning how to use his computer, learning how to use Excel, learning how to use Word doc, learning how to copy and paste, learning how to do all kinds of things that wasn't part of my, previous career in working with Ben Crenshaw. And so when I hear people say, the business might be tough, or this might, that's what I had to go through to get in the business and create what we've created over the years.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Just, that's an awesome story. It just comes down to anything I think that's worth doing, anything that's really successful, it's never easy. It's just not easy. And it's going to be tough. The tough is what weeds out.
Yeah, it's
the weed out process. Okay, and the tough people have that mentality of, look, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be fun all the time, but I'm just going to do it. And if you just set your mind to it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's
amazing what you can do.
The hard way is the easy way. The easy way is the hard way. The harder it is, the easier it is in the back end. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. Out of my original class of classmates, that 120 plus classmates, I think within 6 months, it was me and one other person that was still active in the industry. And that's how quickly they gave up after spending $7,000. I was not going to spend $7,000 and then give up at the end of the day. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my money back, at least make my money back. And then I'll decide whether this becomes a career thing or just simply a one and done or a couple and done type thing. And I would decide that later on down the road. But by God, I'm going to go get my money back, and I'm going to return on my money, and I'm going to learn something, because my grandfather was always a stickler about education, in the sense of he didn't care where you got the education from, whether it was from the streets or from a university, but he was always a stickler on going and learning new things, because he said, once you learn it, nobody can take it away from you. Like, they'd have to take your life before they could take your knowledge and your wisdom. He says, so go acquire wisdom, go acquire things that, you get to keep. And if you fall flat on your face, the learning curve to getting right back up is much shorter. It's much more condensed. Like, you guys could probably attest to it. If Paperstac blew up tomorrow for some reason, you could rebuild a new version of Paperstac in probably by the end of this year, if not sooner, type thing, because you've gone through all the stuff that you had to learn to get to where you are.
Yeah, you just know what you have to do. So it's true. It's just, knowledge is really the key. Is the more knowledge and wisdom you get, the better off you're going to be. So what are you doing now? What kind of stuff? It sounds like you're traveling quite a bit out with the family.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time traveling. Like we sold off a large chunk of our portfolio back in 2020 when commercial rates were very low, and we retained a good portion of it. It's less than 1,000 deals, but we've retained a good portion of it and have no debt on it. So we have that. And then we've been investing in oil wells over the last couple of years. And so we got 57 oil wells now that we own in the state of Texas. And then we homeschool our boys. And so with that being said, we spend a lot of time traveling and we do real world education with them. And we still buy deals on a regular basis. And then we still do education with clients or students, teach them the business to essentially become competitors of ours. But as you guys know, this is a huge industry. You know, it's a $1.7 trillion industry when it comes to private notes and things of that nature. So there's plenty of stuff to go around, you know, at the end of the day. And that doesn't even include the non-performing notes. That doesn't even really roll those into the equation. Right?
Yeah, it's just the owner finance stuff, that just the private stuff that's really performing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So somebody's coming into the industry. I think I know the answer that you're gonna give. I think I know what it is. But what piece of advice are you giving to somebody who's new coming into this industry?
Number one, don't quit early. Don't quit early. It's probably going to take longer than you think it's going to take to get your first deal done, but that doesn't mean, you should quit at the end of the day. Probably the best advice I would give anybody if they really are serious about learning the business, or maybe they're just curious about learning the business, I would go and grab one of our books, I would grab Power of Paper. You can get it on Amazon. It's $20. It's not going to be on Amazon very much longer. We're going to pull it off Amazon and we're just going to sell it ourselves. And then the price is going to go up to $30 plus shipping and handling. So if you want our entire business model, literally it's a $100 million business model, I would go buy Power of Paper and read it. It's 180 pages long, not even that, 120 some odd pages long. So it's not a heavy read. No, we don't have the Kindle version. We do have the Kindle version. We don't have the audiobook version. Sorry about that. But there's some tools in there that people can get their hands on and they can start learning the groundwork for the business. With that being said, I would absolutely start with wholesaling deals because that's going to build your marketing. And the more you wholesale, the more you can define what it is you want in your portfolio. Like when I sold our portfolio off, the majority of our portfolio off, I kept all the good stuff. I kept the cream of the crop. Why? Because I earned it. So I kept all the best deals, and the ones that we sold off were still, I would give them A+ ratings, but I kept all the AAA deals for myself. And that was because I put years of effort into it, and that's what I wanted out of it. But you only understand the deal level when you start marketing and you start seeing deals. And then you can decide what it is you really want to do. It might be performing notes. It might be non-performing notes. It might be seconds. It might be first. It might be on houses. It might be on commercial property. It might be on land. Everybody seems to have a different appetite for different aspects of the business. But you can do that. You can create cash flow and nice healthy paydays without breaking the bank. And then as you see the ones that you want to keep them, buy them with your own money or go get a line of credit and buy them and put them in your portfolio. I look at buying notes as like fishing. You go fishing and you reel in a fish, there's certain fish you can't keep because they're too small, or you can't catch them because they're out of season, or, you talk about hunting, like there's certain times of the year you can go hunting for certain types of animals. Well, that same thing is true in the note space. It doesn't mean that it's a bad deal, it just doesn't fit our matrix. And so wholesale those off to other buyers that love those types of deals. So I would start with a book. It's $20 on Amazon and they'll ship it to you and start there. And then there's it's not free. It costs $1. So you're all in on your business at, $21. That's a heck of a lot cheaper than the $7,000 I paid at the end of the day.
I joined note school. It's a lot cheaper than what I paid. Not that I would change it, but That was I figured you were going to say education. Get educated, learn something. And I'm going to say you showing your business model and something that they have to read, that's educating themselves. So I was right.
Yeah, and I actually bought the book. I did enjoy it, and it was good. It's good. So I remember, it's been a little bit, but I did remember all the marketing techniques you used, because I was like, there's not what it's different than what you hear, like other people doing. So I like your approach was like unique. I was like, I like that. That's
grassroots, man. It's good stuff.
Different.
Yeah, I started there, and I still do that. I don't do SEO on our website. I don't do Facebook ads. I don't do Twitter feeds or YouTube stuff. It's not that those things don't work. It's just not really what I learned. And people ask me all the time, like, how much do you spend on marketing a month? I don't know, like $200-300. It's, that's what we spend, and because we develop the relationships. And the cool thing about it, with the way we do it, is that when you build a relationship with a client, chances are that client has a buddy or a friend that has a note that they want to sell as well. So if you take care of that guy or that gal, then they're going to refer you to one of their friends who most likely probably told them to sell or finance the property or the deal that they sold. So that's what we found to be very commonplace in our business. So we don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing. And as a matter of fact, if you go to my Facebook page, I don't ever talk about real estate notes. Like, very seldom do I ever talk about notes as a whole. It's just more family stuff than anything else.
So,
yeah.
Well, where people want to follow you, where are we going to see you? You got any events planned for the rest of the year coming up, or what's on the books for the Fullwood family in Troy?
I think we might do the Ohio Real Estate Investor Association event in early November. So we're probably going to be down there in the Cincinnati neck of the woods. And then outside of that, we don't really have anything really planned. I am doing my own live, what I call cash flow challenge here in September. So we're going to be doing a 5-day challenge that basically walks people through the business of marketing for notes and getting into the nitty gritty of it and having fun with it. And we're actually building out our own personalized CRM system that we're really super excited about it, because as you gentlemen know, the note industry really doesn't have a universal CRM system. Everybody has their own. And with that being said, we're going to build out ours, and then we're going to help our clients. We're going to duplicate it for our clients and our students so that they'll have a CRM system going forward. So we're pretty excited about all this stuff.
That's pretty cool. That's fantastic. That's a huge need. But we'll put a link for the cash flow challenge if you want in the show notes, so people can sign up for that. I think, man, that's about it.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's
a good one.
So good. So good to hear your story. Good to see you, talk to you. Glad that you and the family are doing well, and
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I think that wraps it up for this edition of the Paperstac podcast. This was a special one, Troy Fullwood. Mm-hmm. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we are looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.
See ya.
Sounds great. Take care, everybody.
Are you new to the mortgage note industry? Have you been wanting to learn the step-by-step process to purchase your first mortgage note? Well, you're in luck. We've convinced our CEO, Rick Allen, to break down everything he knows about mortgage note investing. Through a series of 50 videos, you'll get everything from start to finish of where to purchase notes, how to purchase notes, and all of Rick's investing techniques he has developed over the many years. From performing note tactics to non-performing notes, Rick gives you everything he knows about investing. Bonuses include our glossary of industry terms, Rick's own proprietary calculators he created to evaluate notes, discounts from our partners, our Rolodex of vendors, a private Facebook group, along with a lot more. We've packed so much content into the Academy to take you from beginner to expert in no time. To learn more about the Academy, go to academy.paperstac.com/welcome. Again, that is academy.paperstac.com/welcome.